Welcome to the May edition of the Cinetopia radio show and podcast. I'm Amanda, your host, and on this month's show, we review 4 new release films out in cinemas now or shortly. First up is Luca Guadagnino's latest film, Challengers. Then we keep on the theme of Italian directors and Josh O'Connor with Alicia Rohrwacher's La Chimera. Next up is UK Rose Glass's second feature film, Love Lies Bleeding, which was Glasgow Film Festival's opening film this year. Finally, we review Lithuanian director Marija Kavtaraza's film Slow, which was the winner of the 2023 Sundance World Cinema Directing Award, and is coming out in cinemas in the UK on the 24th of May, and specifically at Glasgow Film Theatre from the 31st of May. So that's all on this month's show, so stay tuned. Cinetopia has a great lineup of events this month and early next month for those of you living in and around the Edinburgh area. Our May Doc Club event is back on the 26th of May at 4 p.m. with The March on Rome, the latest film by Mark Cousins. Through little seen archive and his characteristically cinematic analysis, Mark Cousins narrates the ascent of fascism in Italy and its fallout across 1930s Europe. Both essay film and historical document, Cousins contextualize history through the now, holding a mirror to a political landscape of today. We're delighted to have celebrated director and Edinburgh resident Mark Cousins join us for this screening for a Q&A about the film afterwards. And that's all at the Cameo Cinema. Next up is our monthly networking get-together, and this month it's on Wednesday the 29th of May at the Blackbird Bar, and we'll be back in the courtyard because the sun is coming out again and the weather's getting nice here in Edinburgh, so join us for that. Finally, on the 8th of June at 2 p.m., we have a very special one-off event back at the Cameo. So that is a double bill of Tish plus the Old Oak, and it's followed by an in-person discussion with filmmakers Paul Sung and Paul Laverty, and that will be on the 8th of June at 2 p.m. So Tish is a living portrait documentary of social documentary photographer Tish Murtha, which had its world premiere at Sheffield DocFest last year in 2023. Tish was committed to documenting the impact of Thatcherism and deindustrialization on the working class communities that she belonged to. With this feature documentary, you follow Tish's daughter Ella as she opens up her mother's archive for the first time on screen to reveal a treasure trove of unseen images, artifacts, letters, and diaries. We screened it as our opener as a preview screening in Edinburgh to our Cinetopia Doc program last year. We're happy to be sharing it again with Edinburgh audiences as it's such a beautiful film and one that resonates with so many. And so does Ken Loach's The Old Oak, which was nominated for a Palme d'Or at Cannes in 2023. It's directed by Ken Loach, but it's written by Paul Laverty, and The Old Oak is a fiction film focusing on the last pub standing in a once thriving northeast England village. When a group of Syrian refugees arrive in town, tensions arise between the community and its newest inhabitants, and the Old Oak becomes the epicenter of this conflict. In Loach and Laverty's signature social realist style, the film hones in on the unique friendship between T.J. Ballantyne, the Old Oak's owner, and a Syrian woman, Yara, a photographer curiously capturing the world around her. After the two films, Edinburgh-based filmmakers Tish's Paul Sung and the Old Oak's Paul Laverty will engage in a conversation together about the films, how they intersect, and the important political message they interrogate. The films are priced reasonably at a regular price for just one film, so that's 2 for 1, and we really hope that you'll join us for this special one-off film event in Edinburgh. Hope to see you at one of these events this month or next. Okay, and we're here on our May show, and I'm actually here with a newcomer for us on the Cinetopia radio show, but not new to podcasting world, Kat Zabeka. Kat, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you today, Amanda?
Good, and I'm really excited because we are in the EHFM studio today recording. This is on the weekend, which will come out on Tuesday, but it's the first time that we came back to the studio since COVID, and if you go back to that one before, we were a little nervous. I remember it was a very ominous experience in here. But yeah, no, it's exciting to be back. But then it's also sad that Summer Hall sort of has had some bad news in this last week in terms of, going up for sale. But hopefully, I mean, if anyone who
has been paying attention to all of that. I believe there's a lot of activity in terms of saving Summer Hall and petitions, and similar to what happened with the Film House. So I encourage everyone to go and follow what's going on and sign a petition and help as much as you can. And also, as they said themselves, it's bustling outside right now. I mean, Summer Hall is still open. It will be open. And so just go and make sure that you support local events, local arts events and stuff like that, because that's how you can really support a place like this. So, but yeah, it's great to be here. Great to have you as part of this. We've met over the years through Cinetopia events and, film events around town. But just tell me and tell our audience a little bit about what you do, and you come from an academic background in film. Yeah,
I do. Yeah, and it's funny because we didn't meet at the time, but we were doing a master's at the same time.
Yeah, was it the same year?
Yeah.
Okay,
but you were obviously doing film and curation, is that right?
Yeah.
Exhibition and curation, and I was doing film studies, so that's where that started. And then as soon as I finished, I knew that I wanted to go into I needed a job really, which I got as soon as I finished my master's. But I remember a pal of mine from the master's degree, she created this podcast called Edinburgh Film Podcast.
All right.
And I was like, what a great opportunity to just kind of continue with that. So I took that on, and I did do it for about 3 years, fairly consistently. And that was a lot of fun. And that was where I got my kind of podcasting experience. And I just love talking to people, and I love that it's all about them rather than myself.
Yeah.
And then obviously I knew about you, I think, through my partner, and then through Cinetopia. I kind of knew that Cinetopia existed, and it was always this mystery that I really wanted to access, but didn't know how. And then I think I just came to one of the networking events, and then we kind of connected. So yeah,
absolutely through that. And because Mark works for Screen Language, exactly. And we work with them all the time. They're amazing,
exactly,
in terms of what they do for accessibility.
So
you were doing. That's funny that you guys started right around that time. We started the year I was here, so Cinetopia kind of came out. The whole Cinetopia thing came out of Edinburgh Short Film Festival, and so the radio show was the birth of everything Cinetopia. And so it's great that we're still here and we're back at EHFM, in the studio, and we're going to talk about a lot of films. I would like to say the theme is sexiness, sexy films, very much Italian films, and one particular actor maybe we'll talk about a lot. But yeah, it's also right now sunny, and feels a little bit like as Italian as you can get in Edinburgh right now. But also my whole social media sort of feed is people in Cannes, going to Cannes Film Festival, dying that Greta Gerwig is the president of the jury. So really, maybe another Cinetopia person, Emma, is very obsessed with Greta as we are. So maybe someday you'll see some sort of Greta Fest thing happening. We hope. But yeah, it's been a fascinating Cannes. I don't know if you've been watching any of it, but I've just been watching it from afar and enjoyed it. Yeah.
I just get suggested pictures of Anya Taylor-Joy in Cannes with her, in her beautiful outfits, but I'm not actually following what's happening with the films.
Yeah, no, the big one I was following, and again, this is also shout out to Emma. Thanks to Emma and her fascination with Francis Ford Coppola and Adam Driver, but is that this big Megapolis came out, and this was the film that Francis Ford Coppola had self-financed. He got rid of his entire Coppola winery in order to make it, and the reviews are all over the place. And it's yet to find a distributor, except IMAX has just agreed to screen it regardless, but distribution in the US I think is missing, but the UK and France have distribution for it. But I'm curious, just because of the absolute polarized reviews of what people are saying. And so that's been interesting.
It rings a bell actually now that you say that. I think I was reading about it in Sight and Sound, and how it kind of came together and all of that stuff, and how the different, the big Coppola figure comes through and all that stuff. Really interesting. But yeah, I haven't really seen much else about it.
My favorite bit was the press conference and like the first 30 seconds. Romy, who is anyone who follows the Cinetopia show knows I'm not the biggest Sofia Coppola fan. That's like it's a given. But I do appreciate her daughter and her lovely TikTok viral moment. And she had another moment where she was standing behind her grandfather, Francis Ford Coppola, and was quite annoyed she didn't have a seat. And it was like hot mic moment, and it was great. But yeah, so we're living vicariously through you all who are at Cannes, who are not listening to this at the moment, probably, who are really enjoying themselves, and they should, because the films look fantastic. And we'll be talking, I'm sure, about a lot of those films as they come out in cinemas over the next few months. And Edinburgh Film Festival is coming back. There's been news about that. So it's going to be at the Cameo, like as one of the headquarters, which is really exciting. And also Summer Hall, so where we are right now. So we're going to be really excited to hear about the news on that. Yeah, so the Edinburgh International Film Festival, I think, just announced that their opening film at least. So that is The Outrun, which I think premiered at Sundance, world premiered there, has Saoirse Ronan in it, but it takes place in Orkney, the islands, and also Screen Scotland have funded, so that's very exciting. And we'll be looking forward in the next couple months to talk about what else is what else is going to be showing. And I think hopefully I'll be here this year to see the film festival, so that's exciting, and get to see how it changes and evolves and whatnot. I wasn't here last year. But also Sheffield Doc Fest has announced their program, and we're hoping to go there as well next month and focus on documentaries. And so we'll check out their program as well and talk a little bit more about that next month. But now let's get into what is a fantastic season, I think, of films. I think there's some incredible films out right now. And so I'm excited to talk about a few of them. And we'll start first with Challengers.
You think that tennis is about expressing yourself, doing your thing. But you don't know what tennis is.
What is it? Tashi Duncan, she's in another league. You were incredible today. To have a fashion line, a foundation, she's gonna turn a whole family into millionaires. What are you gonna do now?
Unfortunately, my only skill in life is hitting a ball with a racket.
I want you to be my coach. I want you to be my coach.
How often does this happen? Going after the same girl? Come here.
Which one of us? This is a game about winning the points that matter. I don't need to play mind games with you. Come have a cigarette with me. I have to talk to you.
I don't smoke, and I'm not talking to you.
So the first film we're going to be talking about is Luca Guadagnino's latest film, Challengers. And it's about two tennis players early in their career, Patrick Zweig and Art Donaldson, played by Josh O'Connor and Mike Feist, taking a liking to a young star on the tennis circuit, Tashi, played by Zendaya, who at the early age had an injury and becomes a tennis coach and advisor and wife to one of the boys, Art. And the movie is about their 13-year love triangle with each other and with their love affair of the game of tennis. It's a non-linear film, and we start near the end and go back and forth in time, seeing the characters grow up and evolve, but they ruthlessly never give up on their competitive nature and their love of the game of tennis. And everyone's been talking about this as the sexy tennis film. And so I'm not a massive fan of the director's work. Like, some of films I really like and some of them I don't, but one of my favorite films is Bigger Splash. I really love that film, and I felt that was so sexy and so amazing, and just everything about it. And I'm a huge tennis fan and a tennis in film fan, so I think, like, when I heard about this, I was like, yes, please. And you get to see what I think I really love about this, but I want to hear what you think, Kat, is you get to see every angle of tennis in this. Is, it's like top, bottom, round, from the, everywhere. So I got a lot of tennis and I got a lot of sexy tennis. So I was happy. But what did you think, Kat?
Yeah, I am not not that I'm not keen on tennis, but I just don't care about tennis as much.
There.
But I think I really appreciated the analogy of tennis as a relationship, and I think at one point Tashi says that as well. You know, tennis isn't really about tennis, it's more about this relationship that you develop with the person that you're playing with, and you can really see that play out. And I think the word play as well is so important for the entire film, because it's not just about playing tennis, it's about playing people, I think, which is what she's kind of doing, especially Tashi. I think she's so twistedly good at it. So I think that's one of the aspects that I really enjoyed, even as somebody who's, you know, doesn't really care about tennis that much. But you're right, you know, it was still impressive, and I think, I don't know how much of stunt work has gone into it, but it was really impressive with the kind of power and passion that goes into playing tennis, and especially those shots from the below towards the very end. That was really impressive.
See, that was my least favorite shot, honestly.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know why, just because it took me out of the, like, because it was like there was a line over the, you know, or something. But yes, it was. I was impressed by overall the capture of making tennis look very like a sexy, which I think it is. I mean, I loved the US Open. I used to live in New York, and I used to go to the US Open, and you sit way at the top, you know, and like barely see the speck of the people down there. But it was just it's the most exciting sort of thing when you get into it. And I do think it's very, like, I think it's a very intense emotional game, and I think that's something that and sort of primal, and yet I think people think of it as like this prim and proper Wimbledon sort of, you know, wear the white hats or whatever, but there's so much intensity to it, and also just, I mean, all the words used and the noises made, so it makes for like a primal kind of story. And then that's what you get in this film. And I think, and in fact, I mean, some people are like, oh yeah, well, the sex scenes there wasn't that much sex in the film. It was some making out, but I actually felt like those scenes weren't even as good as this competitive tennis sort of aspect. You know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't actually remember a sex scene necessarily from the film, but I do remember it's almost like, and I think that's what makes it sexy too. It's a lot of the kind of seducing that goes into sex perhaps as well, you know, and the kind of maybe foreplay and the playing, right? Because that's what it is. So yeah, 100%. And, you know, a lot of naked tennis bodies as well. And again, like, I felt like the tennis was being played outside of the tennis court as well, especially with those scenes where you have so the scene between Art and Patrick, or Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor, when they're in the sauna and they're dripping with sweat, and that is just such an intense, again, playing scene, you know what I mean? The kind of back and forth, and the way that the camera moves from one person to the other, but also the way that they are kind of casually just covering the bits, you know, it kind of goes into that as well, that intensity, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I watched a video essay or review on YouTube, and likened the film really responding to Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, and how, because I guess there's some tennis scenes, and you watching the eyes go back and forth. So when you see that scene, you really, like, you can see that he's taking a complete homage to that, but also thinking a lot about Hitchcock and how, you know, how back in the day there was so much tension in those kinds of films where you didn't actually see everything that you could see, which you see in so many other films now. And but the intention is so great that you kind of get that feeling with this film, and I think that's what makes it amazing, apart from everyone being very attractive and very into sporty, and the outfits of Zendaya. I mean, I'm actually not been a Zendaya fan. I didn't know much about her too much until, you know, I watched all of Dune, every Dune and any Dune, like one weekend a couple months ago for this show. But I really think that this is a film that highlights her talent and who she is, and how powerful and what a great actor she can be. And I think that's what made this film also really captivating, was her performance.
100%. And I think you can really see a huge difference between the way that she played, because this is taking place across, what is it, like 14 years or something. So you kind of go back and forth, and at the beginning they are essentially teenagers, but you can really see the difference in her acting, and the way that she portrays the character when she's younger and then when she's much older. And I think at the beginning I wasn't totally convinced, because she's got a kid, and I was like, oh, I don't know, because I know how old what she's like in real life, as not for real. But you could really see that huge kind of gravity where she's older, and she has so much different confidence that comes through, and 100%. I think, as you say, she really carries the film.
It's hard to pick actors who can play that 13 or 14 year sort of,
right.
And I there was a show that was on, but Jesse Eisenberg and Claire Danes are in the show, and it's like one does really well going back to like college or high school, and it's Jesse, and Claire Danes, like you kind of have to just get into it, like, as that's just that, but at least they kept the same actors. Where I can totally see what you say about that with Zendaya, because she's just so young, and you're like, how does that work? It's hard to buy, but the boys do fine, I think.
I think they do really well. And again, like a lot of, I mean, I don't know if other people do this as well, but the same with that scene where you see the tennis from the bottom, or the way that they aged them, or rather they made them younger. I kept thinking in my head, because it was so convincing, I was like, how did they, like, it's amazing that just literally with clothes, there was no CGI, literally just a haircut and different types of clothes made them look properly 10 years younger. And I thought that was really impressive. I didn't have to think twice about it. I was like, is this really? I was just like, I was bamboozled in a very good way, in a very positive way.
Yeah, and the fashion was fantastic. But I think the other thing is, I mean, the score was really pounding. Yes. I mean, there were parts though that were like, it was just not over the top, but just the point when they kind of make out again, and the whole, like, they're in a storm, and it's ridiculous. Yeah. So these almost comical moments are just out of hand way of filming that I think works much better than maybe even some of, like I said, his other films I've seen, which I like, but I don't love. But this one, you're mixing so much together for me, and let's go. And
it's almost like that's the purpose of the film. They're really trying to kind of build it up towards that end scene where you see why they're playing the kind of last match, and what is going on, and all the intrigue that goes into that. But also I think with the music and with everything that's happened up until that point, you really kind of feel it in your body as well, the kind of the intensity, and the music helps so much. I thought the music was phenomenal. But I'm also kind of noticing, and we can maybe come back to this later on, but noticing this kind of trend of going back to the 80s, and the 80s are just huge these days, whether it's music, clothes, or just films based in the 80s as well. So that was interesting, but I thought it worked, even though I felt like that scene in the storm. I was like, it's a bit, I'm just not entirely sure what is going on here and why this is essential for the plot in terms of the storm itself. But even then, I thought it worked.
Was it the 80s?
What, the
whole film was took place?
No.
Oh,
but
right.
It was just the kind of music was very 80s like.
Oh, right.
And I think like there's a lot of kind of going back to like, oh, this is what music sounded in the 80s, and we're going to bring it back because it's cool, Yeah,
absolutely. But also tennis in the 80s was the best, which is also why like all the sweatbands and everything, which is my fashion dream. But I mean, I think we will probably go back to this 80s thing as not to give away some other films coming up, but 80s and sexy sports is definitely a theme going on right now, and I can totally see that. Yeah.
And one other thing I will say that maybe I wasn't too convinced about was the ending, because I remember feeling like if that film finished maybe 10 minutes earlier, I wouldn't be so mad about it, because I think there was so much mystery that went into it, and it's almost like the ending resolved pretty much everything. Yeah. And I thought, what, maybe if they kind of cut it where you know enough but don't know what's going to happen after, it would maybe kind of push that film a little bit higher in my rankings. But yeah, aside from that.
Yeah, I think I think there were a lot of people who didn't like this film, and because I had this kind of rush of, and for all reasons I just told you, a rush of like, I'm watching cinema and I love being in the cinema and I love this kind of film, and have had that in a lot lately. But you know, had people really said it was too long. Like that was a general review was it was too long, or you know, it wasn't sexy enough, or you know, and all these kinds of things that people said. But I think duration was something that people like said maybe too long.
Yeah. It's almost just, you know, and films can be long and still be interesting if you keep up the pace. And I think sometimes it's tricky to. Obviously, you're not going to make everyone happy as a filmmaker, right? And knowing where to cut off that energy and say, okay, this is now enough to almost kind of keep it going after you leave the cinema can be quite nice. But this just kind of kept pushing it, I think, a little bit too far. And with all the music and the intensity, I was just like, oh, now it's just like you making yourself feel good. Sometimes this is maybe not appropriate, but sometimes I like to use the word like kind of self-masturbatory kind of, you know, way of filmmaking, where you're just doing this for your own pleasure rather than for the, you know, this, I don't know.
No, totally. I think they some good filmmakers do it for your own pleasure.
Right,
exactly. And you should, you know, because people will like it if you're doing it for yourself. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. And so that is Challengers, which has been out for a while, and it's also been doing really well in the box office as well. So actually the film was originally supposed to be coming out earlier, or was supposed to premiere at the Venice Film Festival, but got pushed back because of the writer's strike and the SAG strike. But yeah, now it's out now. It's been out for a while, and you can check it out in cinemas still everywhere. So check it out.
Signore, sta sognando?
Era un mezzo mago. Così ce lo siamo portato con noi. Tutta quella bellezza, i vasi, l'oro. Tutto lasciato lì per un mondo che non si sapeva neanche se c'era. Il mondo delle anime.
All right, so the next film we're reviewing is La Chimera, the latest film by Alice Rohrwacher. And Kat, we actually did a little preview of this, and as part of the Glasgow Film Festival, Simon and Gary did their reviews. But now that it's out in cinemas, and we're going to revisit it, and also with the theme of Josh O'Connor again. So, Kat, why don't you tell us about what this film is about?
Yeah, so surprise, surprise, it's the 1980s in the middle of Etruscan country. Arthur, played by Josh O'Connor, is a mysterious Englishman with some sort of gift. And he returns to a small village to rejoin his grave-robbing friend group. We are then taken on a journey through Etruscan gems and articles left for the dead, those who disturb the tombs that house them, and a search for Arthur's lost soul as he longs for his dead beloved, as he himself seems to exist in the kind of in-between of the dead and the living. I think that's a fair synopsis, just because of the narrative itself and how tricky it is to kind of summarize. And I've seen that in a lot of reviews as well, that it's not that it's neither here or there, but in terms of what happens.
Yeah, I think that the fact that it's that mixed world, or that sort of I don't know, like middle world between the living and the dead, is exactly like the way you can explain this film, because it's a mysterious film.
Yeah. So a lot of mystery. But yeah, I would just leave it there in terms of synopsis.
Yeah. What did you think of the film? Tell me what you thought of the film.
Well, I didn't love it.
Really?
Yeah. And I seem to be the only one looking at the reviews everywhere. And I've watched the film every night this week, thanks to this show, which has been fantastic. And I've been really impressed, because this was the last film that I've seen, and I thought, how great that there are all these amazing films coming out. And then I watched this, and then within the first 20 minutes, I turned to Mark and I said, I'm really bored. I just don't get it. And maybe I was expecting a little bit more. Maybe I think, upon reflection, I think I'm more of a mainstream viewer than I thought I was. At least maybe that's the sense that I'm getting. And I think the more I read about it, because there's been plenty of articles and kind of, you know, thinking about what it is, what it represents, what it captures, And the more I read about it, the more intrigued I am. But it doesn't make me like the film more.
That's fair.
Yeah. How about yourself? Are you on the other side of the picture?
I am on the other side of the picture. But when I thought, what I wondered is why sometimes. And I think I went back to what Gary and Simon talked about as well. And I think they talk about this magical realism that's sort of emblematic of Italian cinema in general, and all these sort of things. But I think the thing that hits me is that it is quite mysterious, because I'm really glad that you were able to capture what the synopsis was, but it's very hard for me to even think back. Like, I'm not always great at remembering films for that much, but what the film was about and what all happened. But it's, for me, the feeling that I get from the film that sort of just, there's this one moment that it's a very almost blow up moment where he's kind of walking down a country path, and then behind him are these kind of, like, I think the great, like, Tomb Raiders or something, like they're all in like a van, or so sort of country rural sort of van. And it felt like this scene from Blow Up, that with the mod, like hipster people or something like that, that was just wild. And like, when I saw that scene in Blow Up for the first time, I was like, what kind of cinema am I watching? But I love it. And I would have that same moment in the cinema with this film, where I'm just like, I love this film, and I don't know why. I just love the energy and the imagery and just everything. Like you said, 80s, like the the feeling and the mood that I get from the film. So I love that. But yeah, I mean, I also haven't been back to Italy in way too long, but I feel like this brought me, that it just felt so Italian.
Yeah. And that's something that we talked about with Mark after we saw it together. It was interesting to watch it with him because he felt similar. But yeah, I think he said, well, it's interesting that this is not the Italy that you normally see in films, and it's not just, beautiful beaches and all of that amazing food, And I think maybe that's, and I know this is very much my perspective, but sometimes I think I struggle with films that don't make me feel good. And this film didn't do that because of how dirty and filthy it was, kind of ragged. And I was saying after the film, it seems so cold and so unwelcoming and so unpleasant to be in that world for some reason. But I was still intrigued by it because it felt so real. And I think you're right, it felt very, very Italian. And I really appreciated that. And it kind of had a feeling to it as if it was made in the 80s for some reason, or like you could really feel the 80s coming through, even though clearly it was made, now. But yeah, I think I still struggle with films that don't make me feel good, and I think that just don't like the film. But I think you're right in terms of thinking about it, and that's what some films do really, really well, that even if you didn't enjoy the experience, that you just can't shake them off. Yeah. And you keep coming back to it in your thoughts, and I think that's really impressive still.
That is from the two films, Happy as Lazzaro, which I saw, and this one as well. I keep going back to them in a visual sense, and I think that's something that, I mean, we're all a visual people who watch cinema, and we like the visual usually comes first, and often I do focus a lot on the sound stuff because the sound to me is really important in cinema. But for this, I have all these scenes in my head that I want to go back to, and what I'm grappling with is the same thing that you're saying, I think, a bit like 20 minutes in, or what even Simon was saying in the last review, is that it's not as pleasant of experience in the experience, but what you take out of it and what you think about afterwards, it just stays with you. But yeah, I mean, I'm also like, I didn't see Josh O'Connor in God's Own Country, or was that what it's called, or the Crown. I don't know what it is about this guy. He's the man of the moment.
I know.
But it wasn't until Challengers where I was like, I mean, I was rooting for Patrick and not Art, the whole time. And then the second one, and what was sort of fascinating, I heard him that he fell in love with Alice's work and wrote her and was like, I need to be in your film. And made it happen, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah, there is something about him, right? It's funny. It seems like that seems to happen every year. There's always one or two people from Hollywood, kind of not Hollywood necessarily, but actors that just kind of come through and you see them in all the films and they kind of disappear again. So hopefully that's not the case for him. But yeah, I think there's something really interesting about the way he portrays people, and I think he's so good at being a little bit sleazy, which is what he was in Challengers, and I think he had a little bit of that in this film too. But it was interesting that he wasn't kind of likable from the start. I mean, at any point really for me. But I like the way that he plays those characters, and I think something that came up for me after watching that film, I thought, oh, do you know what? I felt like the characters were a little bit kind of one-dimensional because of the way that you don't really get to know Arthur that much, really. You don't know where he comes from. I mean, you know that he's an Englishman, but, you know, at one point I think somebody says to him, oh, you know, you still, when they're kind of on the boat talking to this fancy woman who's selling all this.
Yeah, Alba Rocker, I think. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And she kind of says to him, you know, you're not you can't really shake off what you are and where you come from, and that kind of makes you think, and you're like, okay, what does that mean? But you don't know, because it's not really, you just don't know, you know. That's not something that's explored in the film. So I think it's almost because he's so impenetrable in the film that irks me.
I totally get that, because I think that's what I go back at, the mysterious, like why do I like him in this film, but what, because he's not likable, you know. And you know, there's one scene where he does something, and I think I was watching it with my friend Emma, and she was like, I knew he was going to do that, or we both were like, we knew he was going to do that, and it was like, why, you know, like, what's the motivation of this character to do the things that he does? And it's fascinating, but I still, there's something mysterious. There's something that works with him in this film. I mean, I'm not saying that it didn't work in Challengers, because we both really like that film, but I think there's something that makes that he works in this film. And I have a feeling that you'll see him in more of her films going forward, because from that interview, it sounds like she takes them on, then her actors and colleagues, and constantly works with them. And so they could potentially be this new, like, you know, Yorgos Lanthimos and Emma Stone or like thing going on that we see, which is fine. But you're right. He's just popped up in this, in our world for this last month. But I think he's a little bit like the Jacob Elordi of last year. Yeah, 100%. Who was that person?
Yeah. Although, he seems to be taking on really interesting roles.
Yeah.
And he learned, you know, I was reading about that today. He learned Italian in like 3 months, and then he was saying what an experience it was to go to Italy and try and speak with the locals, and he just couldn't, because the dialect was so different. And I think his Italian is really impressive in the film. There's something also about the way that he masters that language in the film, seemingly, that's really impressive. Now that we are talking about it, I'm like, I kind of want to go back. I'm like, maybe I did like that film.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have to like it, but it was actually good that we I like to make sure that we have different views and stuff, and so usually we have multiple people on, and they often, like, one of them really hates something and one of them really likes it or whatever, but it isn't for everyone, I don't think. And I think that's something that everyone, you know, I mean, I didn't like Happy as Lazzaro as much. I liked it, and I just loved the mood and like the filming, and I think I just I like the shots, but I didn't like it as much as I liked this one. And I don't, again, like, maybe relates to this like Antonioni, or like I love old industrial sort of like shots and stuff, like things that are ugly pretty. I love that. And so, and then that kind of underworld of the discovering, like, you know, Raiders of the Lost Ark sort of like, you know, fun stuff that, like, there's something very romantic about it.
It's interesting you say the word
romantic and nostalgic.
And that's exactly it. I think, you know, it's whether you like those shots, because that's exactly what was putting me off. And I just thought, there's a bunch of scenes where they're at the beach and they find a tomb and they try to go into it. And I'm just thinking, it looks, again, so cold. This water seems so toxic. It's everything about this is just yuck. But then I think when I read about it, and the ideas just sound so fantastic. And I think maybe that, and I was also wondering when you were talking about the director, if it would be beneficial to maybe know some of the previous films that would kind of inform a little bit, you know, what's happening in this one too. But yeah, I think that the idea of the kind of liminal space between, you know, the way that Arthur goes down into the tomb and then comes up, and then it's almost like he can't occupy that kind of living space too well. So that's why he keeps coming down. But there's a lot of kind of tension between, I think, who he is. And that part I really enjoyed. And I think that's the one bit that I keep coming back to.
Yeah. Well, we're going to constantly think about it, and we can constantly debate it. But it is La Chimera, and it's currently out in cinemas right now.
The excitement in the air is palpable. The atmosphere is electric. A celebration of history in the making.
What is this place? You're looking pretty good in there. There's some pretty serious lines going. Yeah? Why don't you want me working for your dad? Well, he's a psycho. Saw that big girl. That you two are maybe together.
You like guns?
I prefer to know my own strength.
That's not what I'm paying you for.
If you touch her, I'm gonna tell them everything you ever did.
Are you threatening me?
We gotta get out of here. Let's just keep driving. I fucking love you, you idiot. I love you too.
All right, so the next film we're going to review along the 80s and sexy theme is Love Lies Bleeding, directed by Rose Glass. Kat, tell us about this film.
Yeah, so Lou, played by Kristen Stewart, is a worker in the local gym, and she falls in love with Jackie, who's a bodybuilder with a dream to win a bodybuilding competition in Las Vegas. Soon enough, though, things get really complicated as Jackie finds a job at a shooting range owned by Lou's father, who Lou doesn't speak to. And so, again, soon enough, Jackie gets dragged into a very complicated family dynamic, and their love starts to have violent consequences. It's quite gruesome and funny, it's tender and sexy, and it's all wrapped in a ragged 80s vibe with a lot of neon lights and kind of dark shots.
Yeah. And what did you like it?
I did. Yeah. I think it was quite a journey.
Yeah.
To watch that film, and I think I was visually, you know, you were speaking about how we film people tend to be quite visual people. From the very first shot, I thought this is just you know, there's so much to kind of digest in terms of what's happening visually. And again, another one of those films that feels very much like it was made in the 80s. It's also a little bit rough, I think. A lot of scenes kind of in the darkness. You kind of don't know where you're going, you know, what the space is around you. But I did enjoy and again, a little bit of maybe magical realism there as well, especially towards the end. And that pace kind of picking up as we go through, because I think I don't know how about yourself, but I wasn't sure what the film was about from the trailer. I had no idea what to expect.
No, I agree. So Saint Maud was a huge film, that her first debut film, and we reviewed it on the show, but I actually see it. I think it was part of the London Film Festival, and it was a horror, and I'm not normally a horror person, so so I kind of I avoided it, and was, you know, always meaning to pick it back up because people talked about it so well. So then I saw the trailer for this, and I just I am really into 80s, and I'm really into this kind of stuff, and the neon, like you say, the neon is a huge grab. So the trailer really got me going. But then halfway through it, you know, there was some things that happened, some very horrific things that happened. And I was like, oh yeah, this is from a horror filmmaker. Yep. Like, this is what we're going to do. Like, I wasn't expecting it, but I got it. And and also it was, some wild wild ways of like of it all happening, and it was we lost a lot of people in the in the film. It was it's not necessarily a horror, but as much as like violent and I mean gruesome. Body horror sort of kind of thing, like Titane. But I was able to handle it more than Titane, I think. But yeah, I liked it. I liked it. I mean, it got me like, I'm not into bodybuilding sort of, muscle things. And also I've had a weird thing about veins, like when I was younger, just like that was like the one thing that turned me off was like veins popping out of muscles and stuff. So, once that became kind of a prominent, like close up and sound like,
the sound,
I was like, oh no, here we go. Like I just my head kept going the other direction to watching it. But yeah, I mean, I think what you said about the visuals, I think it was exceptional. And I also think that this film, some people, I was listening to some other reviews and stuff that that you really should see Saint Maud before, because they kind of have there's totally different worlds and totally different people, but like they have a similar sort of resonance with each other. So I will probably now go back and see that. But yeah, I think that you can really see that this is a dynamic filmmaker and like in the making, and also with the mixture of these two performances, and also very, very sexy scenes. Like the sex in this one was like top notch, no, but really good. And like you could see that this relationship wasn't just like with Challengers, we have this like manipulative power grab, sort of like the sort of energy and sort of high drive, and this you sort of feel. You can feel that they're in love, and it's sensual and it's sensual but sexy, and it's about the body, and it's about showing off the body and kind of a dance performance stuff. So you add all the horror plus that, it's a really captivating film in the way that it's filmed, the way the energy and the pacing of it is. So it's a new, it's something new I hadn't seen. So I really like that part of it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of appreciation of bodies in this one, and I was just saying to my personal trainer today that I mean, it's, masculine bodies is not necessarily something that I like appreciated, I think, prior to this film, but the way it was filmed, there was almost like a tenderness in the close-ups and in the way that especially Katie O'Brien's body is obviously on show a lot because she's the bodybuilder. But and again, using kind of the female gaze as well, done so beautifully. It was a joy to watch. And I think another part that I found really interesting is the way that the kind of dynamic between characters, and Ed Harris as Lou's father was just the most menacing,
scary
character I've ever seen, I think. And there was a few flashbacks of him coming onto the screen as Kristen's kind of remembering some scenes from her past, and that's just worse than anything else that happened to the bodies, I think, throughout the film. There's something about his face with the long hair that is just absolutely terrifying. But I love that they were kind of antagonistic with each other throughout the film. But then as the film progressed, Kristen's character was becoming more and more like him. Yeah. In quite a lot of ways. So that was a fun journey to be on, I think, with her character. And also just seeing Kristen become, very confident and comfortable in herself as well. I've seen a few films with her quite recently as well. One being Diana, the one about
Spencer.
Diana. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see her take on different roles that have such a range. So
yeah, I agree. I think there's some sort of like just honesty about her performances, like a really believable, and I didn't really connect with, apart from like the romance, which I thought was, like I said, I thought was really well handled. I didn't necessarily connect with any of those characters because they were like their motivations, and for me the Ed Harris was scary, and the whole guns and everything like that, and like the West and stuff, it scares me, but I didn't completely connect with their motivations. Like, why Jackie would just, I mean, I know she was taking steroids and hence that was changing her personality or something like that, but I did not like Yeah, I didn't totally get it. And then like why you would do those things that you do. But at the same time, I would say that the performances were good and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the film. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite of all of the ones we're talking about, but I enjoyed the experience of watching it.
Yeah. I was going to say as well, did you find it funny?
I didn't find it as funny. Okay. No. Did you find it funny?
I think there was a humor to the way that.
I mean, at the end, I think was a bit funny.
Yeah.
Because I didn't find it scary. I just found, like I said, I'm just not. The second that the veins started popping out of her muscles, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like body horror stuff.
Yeah, I think what with the humor, the way that it was jarring was quite funny, and the way that, and again towards the end, I don't really want to spoil anything, but the way that people kind of go against each other, and you just like, whoa, I think at one point I just like literally put my hands over my head, and I was like, what just happened? Like, what is happening? This is complete madness. And I think in that there was a bit of humor, and I think by the time it was finished, I was like, that was good fun. That was good.
Yeah, I would say it's good fun. Yeah. It felt like a new modern Thelma and Louise or something,
right?
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so it worked. And I can't wait to see more, you know, from this director.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Love Lies Bleeding, and it's still out in cinemas, so check it out.
Labas. Dovydas.
Elena.
Malonu.
Malonu. Žinai, kas keista? Tu man nieko neprimeni. Aš tavęs noriu.
Aš seksualus.
Okay, and the final film that we're going to review on the show is Slow. It's a Lithuanian film by Maria Kavtaradzė, and it's about a dancer, Elena, and a sign language interpreter, Dovydas, and they have this meet cute at a dance class where Dovydas is interpreting for the participants of the dance class, and the film starts there and continues to show off a deep and growing bond that the two main characters grow for each other. The main issue between the two of them is that they have to come to terms with Dovydas being asexual. And he's honest and open as he confesses this to Elena as their romance grows and grows. And the film explores openly how this relationship has to deal with the love for someone who does not feel sexual feelings for anyone and another who is incredibly sensual. So this film was premiered at Sundance in 2023, and it's coming out in cinemas in the UK on the 24th of May by Conic. And I would like to hear, Kat, what you thought of this film.
Well, this was my favorite film out of all of them.
Yeah.
I think almost similar to what you were saying about La Chimera, in the way that you enjoyed being in that world. I just loved being in this world. I think a lot of it has to do with the setting itself. Yeah. I recognize a lot of it from just growing up in Slovakia, that slightly decrepit place or location that you wouldn't necessarily pin down to like, oh yeah, it's this. It was just, these people are occupying a very ordinary world and life. And I love that. I think those are my kind of favorite films. And as you say, the best, I think the most pleasure that I got from the film was about the difference between them and their physicality. Because I think both of them had a physicality, of course we all do. But with Elena, it was very, very sensual. It was very sexy. She just needed to move. She's a dancer in the film. I think she's a choreographer actually in real life as well.
Oh wow!
And there's one scene in particular where she gets rejected by Dovydas, and then the next day she's in the studio dancing with her dancing group, and it's almost like that's almost like a sex scene. I think.
Yeah.
It's so sensual, and I found myself very much feeling. And this is, I mean, I don't know how people feel about this, but I could feel the way she felt in that moment. So that just kind of came right through the screen, which was amazing. And then on the other hand, you have Dovydas, who's very reserved, touching has its kind of place. And it's not to say that he doesn't touch Elena, but he does it in a very different way. And then his physicality comes through his signing because he's an interpreter. So there's a song that he keeps coming back to interpreting, and it's very polished, it's very elegant, and I think it's it works so wonderfully in opposition to Elena and how she expresses herself. So absolute joy of a film.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved this film so much as well. Like, and I think this one was the most emotional, and you know, also like we've been talking about sexy films, and I think this was the most sensual of the sexy film, you know, and I think something that really explores the growth of, you know, relationships, and also like, you know, relationships that don't, you know, always work, or, you know, I mean, because in there there's the fact there was a previous relationship that Elena had and whatnot, but also, you know, just sort of the time that it takes to build, and what you build, and what love is, and you know, but how you work together to if you can't meet those people's needs, how you know, how you sort of come to a compromise with that. And I just, you have to see it. Like this one, you just have to see. It's not it's nothing just super dramatic happens, other than it's about a love affair.
Yeah, just two people, I think, loving each other, and I think also that's captured so beautifully in the way that these characters interact. Because they're so tender with each other, but also they laugh a lot, and that laughter seems so genuine, and it's almost like you kind of, I think from all the films that you kind of watch across your life, you almost expect a scene where something just goes wrong, you know, like, oh, David's or someone is going to do something, he's going to try and make her laugh, but she's not going to laugh because she's upset or something. That never really happens. I think they genuinely enjoy each other's company, and I think that's the heartbreak of the entire film, where again, you know, relationship maybe isn't just love, it's also sex, it's also maybe something else. So how do you then negotiate all of those things? And as you say, you just need to see it, because I think it's such a feely film as well. You have to feel it kind of wash over you as you go through it.
You know, you mentioned where and how it was shot, and I think that to me, I'm a particular fan because I've done some work with dance companies in the past, but how dance is shown on screen. And I really loved like a lot of those sort of moments of just lingering on the dances, and, you know, and the different performances, but also the time of these two people spending physically together. And there's so much time and duration on that. But also, I think a lot of these films feel like they're very vintage shot. I think this was shot on 16 millimeter. So there's something really beautiful about it. It's not like as rich maybe as La Chimera, but it's maybe more dull, like more of a sort of like the tones are more you know, like in the beiges and the tans or something like that, but it's got this really gorgeous like sort of tactile feel, which then when you're mixing with the images of people lying around a lot, you know, but like lying around and bonding and falling more in love. It's really something special.
And just capturing the ordinary, right, as you said, the kind of textures of and this is I don't know if this is just me, but as you said, there's a lot of kind of lying around in bed and stuff, and Elena is wearing a lot of silk, and I just remember that really sticking out, and kind of be like, that silk just looks so comfortable, or like, oh, look at all of this like old furniture that again I know the style of because of where I come from. But I'm like, oh, look at, I just kind of want to, you know, touch it and feel it, and you almost hear the floorboards creak and all of these details. But also I think it's not pretentious with that, because I think sometimes I find that in films they try to, you know, bring on this mood of like, oh, look at these people being hipsters, or, you know, whatever it might be. No, these people are just absolutely ordinary people who wear whatever they might wear, you know, in that way it didn't feel like all these characters were wearing costumes or something, or oh, this is a set. No, it's just literally following normal people around. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel ordinary, but in a good way. And I mean, also that they're ordinarily beautiful. They're very beautiful, like actors. So it's very pleasant to watch them, which is I mean, the subject matter, which is something that, you know, I think it clearly is important to discuss and educate, but it's not a film that's like, we're educating you on this is how, this is what it is to be asexual. It's like exploring that and through the story in a way that's just, I mean, again, unless you see it, you don't really feel what we're talking about, which is just how emotional we are with it. But it's really, really great film. And I hope that it screens in a lot more cinemas. I know that it's going to be at Glasgow Film Festival. Glasgow Film Theatre. So if you're in Glasgow, you need to see this film in the cinema, because I think it'll be wonderful there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say if there's one film you're going to watch from all of the films we talked about, it's this one.
Well, they might have already seen some of them, but yeah, no, I mean, it's just a completely different take on like sexy, than Challengers, which we had fun with, but yeah, this is it's a maybe more of a feminine take, in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So very good. So that's Slow, and that's coming out on the 24th of May. So go check it out. All right, so that wraps our show for May, and so Kat, are you what's up for you in the next couple months?
Yeah, film wise, not much, to be honest. I'm hoping that I'll be able to catch some of the film festival, Edinburgh Film Festival in August. That's always very exciting, and I think it's really exciting for me to do something like this show, just to be reminded that going to the cinema is fantastic, and it really is. I don't know how a lot of people feel and why they watch films, but I just feel like my brain can just go into all these different rooms and explore worlds that you just wouldn't otherwise, and that's just the best feeling ever. And also, actually, one thing I would like to mention is the fact that I've been to the cinema every day, right, for the past week. The top amount of people that were with me was maybe 20.
Really?
So I would encourage. I don't know what people are doing, and this was Monday, Tuesday, whatever, Friday. People go to the cinema, just invest in a ticket at least once a week. I think it's really worth it, but it's sad not to see full cinemas. So
well, it's the worst time as someone who's run film events and running 2 film events coming up, which I've already mentioned, but I'll be plugging again. It's when it's sunny out and in Scotland, everyone just doesn't. They just can't go. And in fact, I had trouble a couple of times this week because I was like, I could leave, and I was literally just working at my desk, but the sun was just beating inside, and you're just. It's very hard when it's never this nice.
That's true.
Which is if it's this week, it's great that there were 20 people.
That
were really good to see. But I mean, these films, all of them I saw in the cinema except the last one because I couldn't. But if I would have been able to, I would have wanted to see that, because I think, there's just so many ways that I take in films in the cinema that's different, and it's really, it's so important to watch them in the cinema. And I think I've been watching a lot of people in them. I think there's been a lot of big blockbusters like The Fall Guy, which I've still not seen, but people say is great. And there's been a lot of Challengers got a lot of people in. But there's been quite a lot. There's also Danny Boyle stuff coming back out and bringing back people to the cinema. So it's great. I'm glad. I think we're still on a roll from Barbie and Oppenheimer. I think where people are coming back to it, but we could use a little bit more. But
yeah. But I don't think there's much coming up in terms of films that are coming out in the next month or so. I think I saw a trailer for Rosalie, which I'm intrigued by, but I'm still undecided if it's worth going, because I've heard mixed reviews. But yeah, nothing big that's coming up. How about yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm excited for Sheffield Doc Fest, and I'm excited for our films. So I'm excited for March on Rome on the 26th of March, Mark Cousins, and then we're coming back to a film we showed before in November when we started the doc, Tish, which is an incredible documentary by Paul Sung, and The Old Oak by Ken Loach, which he is self-proclaimed final film, but I hope that's not the case. But Paul Laverty, who wrote it, will be there, and Paul Sung will be there in discussion about the connections between those films. And yeah, there's a lot that connects them in place and subject matter and whatnot. But I think having the two filmmakers there together, sort of interrogating the films, will be amazing. It's a great deal because it's 2 for 1. So if you're like Kat and you like to stay in the cinema for a while, you got hours in the cinema and for a price of 1. But yeah, so I'm very excited about those. I hope people will come. I hope it's a rainy day.
Fingers crossed.
Will motivate. The other thing that's interesting is that people are making decisions about going to cinema now much like later.
Yeah.
And then we've just noticed that a lot since we'd run events. Like we won't know how many people will show up, and sometimes it will be completely related. Wow. And even if they buy a ticket, they might not come if it's like a super sunny day. So
that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's been post pandemic where I think people make decisions last minute, and I don't know if that's across all art forms, but like definitely in the cinema. So so you never know what you're gonna get. But yeah, like a big festivals for me are like my favorite place. And yeah, so I'm excited to be back, to be here at the Edinburgh International Film Festival coming up. So I'm sure in the next couple of months we'll talk about the program, but I'm excited to see what Sheffield Doc Fest has to offer. It's an incredible film festival for documentaries. I like Amaya and I went last year and just really had a blast. And I think it's such a really important international industry event for documentary filmmakers. But yeah, we might see something in that festival that we'll bring to Edinburgh audiences going forward. So that's exciting. And yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. So those are a few things, but and also spending a little time out in the sun as well.
Yes, the downsides of running film events in Scotland.
Yeah.
I would have known.
Well, I mean, then I used to run them outdoors, but now it's like the rain is just nonstop right now. So like the last couple of years, I did actually, this is marking the year, the anniversary here of the Local Hero 40th, which went swimmingly in terms of like weather. It was like 3 days of as good as it gets up there. So I've been lucky at the tail end of my career of outdoor film festivals, but for the past few months, I've decided to stay all indoors. Yeah. It's just safer there.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough.
But I have a lot of rain gear now, thanks to my career of outdoor film festivals. Stay tuned. We'll probably do it again. I'll get them gumption to get out there again. But yeah, I mean, it's lovely now, but next week's not supposed to be so good. So you never know. No. You never know what you're going to get. But yeah, well, thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Kat, for coming on. And yeah, so we'll see you next month.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.